Joining me now is Jonathan Tyler, who has a great new song called Magic Sam's Boogie, which our audio listeners will hear after this conversation. And our video listeners, well, you get to see a picture of it right there next to me. Jonathan, thank you for taking the time to chat with me today.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me on, Christian. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and so I want to talk about the song itself right off the bat because I am a music fan. I am not in any way musically inclined or talented, and I don't even know that much about it. But it's the sound of this song. It immediately, and I listened to it a bunch of times over the last couple of days because obviously I wanted to get familiar with it when I talk to you. It has to me what sounds like an older sound. It almost sounds like an old Allman Brothers sound. There's a style, but did you do anything? Did you use like, I don't know, old equipment, old instruments? Does it just have a vibe that feels old, or is there something technically about it? And I realized that I could be completely way off, and it might not be
Yeah,
that at all.
I'm a total music nerd too, man. I love music, and I've gotten into recording and stuff over the last 5 years, like engineering and owning my own studio. And so, yeah, there was definitely some tricks, technical tricks to beyond just like the style of playing that make it sound the way it does. I mean, besides just the style of like the playing and the technical parts of what we're all playing on our instruments, we're using vintage amps, like tube amps. So we're using,
Yeah.
that's a huge part of the guitar tone, is using those vintage tube amps. Huge part. But then beyond that, we were recording at Arlen Studio in Austin. So it's a recording studio that's got a Neve console in it, which the Neve consoles, they were kind of like, still are, and they will forever go down in history as being sort of like the warm, uh, just the best of the best of what you can buy um, to record yourself with. I mean, they're insanely expensive at this point because they were, the ones that are really sought after, 60s, 70s model Neve. And so we were recording on 1073 Neve console. And, from there, we got into some mixing tricks, which we kind of did some things like we reamped the vocals, meaning like we sent the vocals back through a guitar amp and recorded that amp. Uh, and that's why the vocals sound kind of like, a little bit old school. It's because they've been reamped through a guitar amp and threw a mic on that guitar amp, and that processed it that way. Um, so stuff like that, little tricks like that. But
Yeah, so my ear definitely caught something. Like I said, it had a feel of like old Allman Brothers studio recordings, but it was very specifically I think it ended up on a greatest hits album. It ended up on like a live CD. There's this recording of the Doors doing the Van Morrison or Love song Gloria. And it
oh
sounds
yeah,
like, so what you're talking about is like, yeah, this is probably exactly what they use. I think it's from a sound check. Like, I don't think that, and
Gloria,
uh,
yeah,
yeah.
that's them. That
Oh, yeah,
was
yeah,
that
them. Yeah, yeah,
Van Morrison.
yeah.
Well, no, he did it on his own too. But
Right.
man,
But
I
but
love
the Doors
that.
version is the one that I heard first in my life,
Oh,
so that's what I
right.
always think of. So like the Doors version of that song is the one that, and like I said, I'm pretty sure it's not a live recording, but I think it's from a sound check because there's no crowd noise. And it's like it probably is what you're talking about in terms of the equipment. In terms of the studio equipment though you're talking about, you said that it's called a Neve, and it reminded me that gosh, it was probably like 7 or 8 years ago now, but when the Foo Fighters made that album Sonic Highways, they did an HBO documentary and they went to all
Yeah.
these great, like legendary studios.
Hmm.
And it seems like you really do get a different sound from, some of these different studios. And so what you're talking about, this Neve machine that,
Hmm.
they're very expensive, hard to come by. What do you think, if you could, for somebody that's not a musician but just somebody that listens to music, what do you think is the number one quality that it brings to music that you wouldn't get it, especially if you used top of the line modern day technology?
Well, it's really about you start getting into like technical electronics. You're talking about um, you're talking about the style of power. Like it really comes down to electricity and the way that these over the time that electricity's been used, there's been these different technological advances where when they first came out with it, it was power tube, um, like tube televisions. People have seen you've seen the tube televisions and tube radios, and tubes were the way that they would make power uh, amplified to make it go from a small thing to a much stronger thing. And so that was the early 40s 50s. That was the style of like the original chess records and the original sort of like blues records that we all love, like and even the awesome like Sam Phillips Sun records and stuff. All that stuff is pretty much tube power uh, recordings. So that's how they were firing up these machines. Well, Neve was the kind of the electrical engineer that developed solid state power, which just all that to say, it's kind of like when cell phones took a jump from like this certain, the early era of
like the flip phones compared to like an iPhone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like it made this huge technological jump to solid state power. And so then there were these companies that came out with different sort of consoles and different sort of ways of basically amplifying a vibration, because that's what it is it's a vibration. Sound is just a vibration, and so you're amplifying that with electromagnetics. And so the types of power play that you're doing here, that's what really affects the texture and the color. And so when you talk about a Neve, you're talking about a process that essentially, like, it's hard to get it. You get into like really technical. I think
Sure.
for a lot of people, they're probably bored by this stuff. But it's like saying like like a '69 Camaro versus like a Tesla. It's like
Yeah.
the Camaro's got this big block. It's explosions, like thousands of explosions happening every second to create this power. And then the brand new Tesla, which is like virtually quiet, has no sound at all. It's clean, and it's it's almost like going to a hospital where everything is super clean and everything is you can't get this sort of like grease and dirt that you're going to get with this other thing. Like, so I think there's benefits to both things. I think that it's really cool to hear a super clean recording that just sounds pristine and perfect in every way. But then there's just something about listening to blues when it sounds like it's on the brink of explosion. It's on the brink of just, it's at the edge. Like, we're pushing everything so hard that the power process inside the board and stuff is just like rumbling, and then it causes all this sort of harmonic distortion. And to me, that's the best kind of blues. Those are the records that I love. Like, I love those. That's the characteristics of the stuff that we're talking about, like the Doors and even like any of the Sam Phillips stuff from Sun Records. I mean, it just has that characteristic of sort of like edginess, and it's because, well, they were running the power pretty hot. They were pushing it.
Yeah, no, and I think it's sort of what you're talking about. I think some musicians, the new crisp, clean sound is exactly what they want, but I think you're right that the blues, it should feel a little bit more lived in. I mean, to use a very nerdy example that has nothing to do with music, it's sort of the idea when they were originally creating the special effects, 45 plus years ago for the first Star Wars movie, they wanted these spaceships to look like they'd actually been used and they'd been through the ringer instead of because everything was always bright and shiny before that.
Mhm.
And it's like, no, this is a pretty rough place. And I think you hear that a lot in sounds. To me, it's like, the difference between, I think they did for that same Foo Fighters record, recording on analog tape, because obvious, like, your master's actually on analog tape, you're going to get a very different sound.
Mhm.
And it's something that I think, when CDs were first really the mass market, the way that everybody got their music, you would notice like some of the older records, the source would be listed as analog, and then eventually converted to digital, and then the newer ones were all digital, and you're like, yeah, it's good, but there's different to the feeling anyway. So
No,
I didn't
you're
realize
right.
we were gonna. Yeah.
You're right. You're 100% right. I mean, it's like it's really. I mean, we're at a place now where I feel like you can kind of merge all those things, and I do. I totally use digital things and I use analog things, and I feel like it's kind of great film directors. They'll bring in different cameras and they'll have cut film stuff with brand new digital stuff and kind of merge them to have sort of like different characteristics in different shots, and it's all sort of like a crayon. It's like it's your colors.
Yeah.
You use all those different colors to paint a picture that you want to paint. And I think that's where we're pretty lucky nowadays, is that we can streamline all this stuff together if you have the right team that knows how to do it. And it's technical, but it's totally feasible now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think film is a great comparison because you have directors like Christopher Nolan who will still always use film as opposed to digitally, and then Quentin Tarantino takes it a step further. He likes to shoot on 70 millimeter,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah,
you're gonna get some very specific visuals there,
yeah.
and yeah, and I think if you listen to music closely, and I always joke because I have two young kids, so a lot of times, like if I listen to music, if I'm listening to new music, I've got one earbud in one ear while I'm like doing the dishes so that I can listen to kids. But if I have both ears in, I'm actually listening to it so much closer than the way that I used to. And you can really, hear this stuff. And I think it's a lot to think about. And it was, I thought that Magic Sam's Boogie was a great feel to the song. I really enjoyed just listening to it a bunch of times. But then I just started trying to think about some of the process because I could clearly hear it in there. And for people to find Magic Sam's Boogie, by the way, I should mention, they just go to Jonathan Tyler Music, and I'm sure that they can find it in all the streaming services too, right?
Yeah,
That's the way to
totally.
find the song. Yeah. Yeah.
What's
Um,
crazy is that and I've got to get this video to you because we filmed it, and we did a one take film, like where the camera turns on, you see us count it off, you watch the whole thing like happen right there, so that like it's all right there, and there's no cuts in the film. It's just like one take.
oh, wow. Yeah.
So I thought that part of it is also pretty illuminating. I've got to get that over to you, man, because
Oh yeah, no, I definitely like to see that. Yeah, I understand there'll be a video is going to premiere sometime, maybe in April or so. So that was what the
yeah,
publicist had mentioned to me. Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, and I mean, I think that I've talked about this with a few musicians as in the months since it aired, but that was one of the most fascinating things about the documentary about the Beatles making Let It Be, was that they were playing everything live, and doing it, and so we would watch these things in one take. And when I was younger, I loved there were like home videos you could get. I remember very specifically it was Aerosmith, the making of Pump, and Metallica making the Black Album, but you really saw them in the studio. And those days, in the days of you talk about tape, you got like 2 hours max, but now with the streaming service, we had like 8 hours of this Beatles documentary.
yeah,
And it's I mean, you talked about being a music nerd, and that is
yeah.
I'm a nerd about a lot of things, and music is definitely one of them. And yeah, I'm always fascinated in watching the process, and that was really telling that the well, one, things like you know things like Paul McCartney comes in and he's like, yeah, I got this little idea, and it turns into Let It Be. But just the fact that it's like, yeah, we'll give it a try. And you listen to the first take and you're like, well, I mean, they probably don't need to do it again. And then they would
Yeah.
do it like 20 more times, you know?
Well,
So
that's the thing about the more you do it, like the technical side of things, it's fascinating, you know, and just how things can, like the smallest idea can turn into something so, you know, iconic. It's just like, but it just starts as an idea, you know, and you can't judge all the ideas right off the bat. You have to kind of
yeah.
let things have their and because you never know, you may think like, oh, you know, this Magic Sam track, I've kind of judged it and was like, well, it's just a jam, you know, like I don't know that it doesn't even feel like a traditional song in a sense. And but like all the people I've showed it to are just like, shut up, man. Like, no, this is great, you know? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna get out of my own way here and just like, you know, like because you never know like what is gonna be that thing. Like you may just as an artist or as like a creative, you might just come up with an idea and then write it off, and then somebody else picks it up someday and is like, wait a second, why did you blow this off? It's like I think that everybody kind of has a distorted view of their own thing, and it's just you never know like what's going to connect and what people are
Yeah, I
going
mean,
to.
I feel like a lot of creative people there. It also gets to a point where, like, you know, you could like a song at first, and then you know you go through the process of mixing it and just fine tuning it, and then and then you just get tired of it, and so you can't
Oh yeah.
be a judge anymore. Yeah, my wife is a television writer, so by the time that she's like 2 weeks into a script, she's like, I don't even know if it's good anymore. I'm like, well, that's why I'm here to read it,
Oh,
and let you
that's,
know. And I
that's
mean,
fun.
and I've worked with a number of comedians over the years, and they, for the most part, all hate watching themselves. Because you're always like, I could have paused a half second longer here. Oh, this word would be better than that.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, you definitely see that. You're sometimes you're your own worst critic. So I think it's right for you to get out of your way, because I would be one of those people telling you that it's a great song and it should be out there. So I'm glad that it is.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the nature of like what we do, and I think like if we didn't have those critical uh, parts of us, that's the part of us that makes us get better. You know, it's like we get better because we have that critical part of us, but the part of us that is inspired, that kind of comes up with the ideas and sort of has the sort of spark. I think that part of us is more of like the childlike love of whatever it is that we do. It's like the part of me that gets excited about hearing, a brand new song from somebody else that I love, that gets inspired by watching a film or something like that, is not necessarily the part that analyzes. It's like you have two parts of your brain, and I think um, that both parts are pretty necessary, because if you don't have the inspiration, then it's no good. But if you like don't have the discipline and the critical nature, then you kind of always remain like a little baby as far as your art. You kind of have to work in tandem, and
Yeah, sure.
and so yeah, it's good to have a team of people that help you when it comes to that stuff. Because man, yeah, I'm a really critical person, so I can critique myself to doing nothing. Um,
Yeah, as a music fan, it's always one of those things where when an album's reissued, in a special edition, and there's like bonus tracks, outtakes, or bands who've put out massive box sets. You're like, what? Why did they throw this song away? And it's probably exactly what you're talking about, because at that moment in time, they're like, this one is definitely better. And in a lot of cases, your bonus tracks, your deleted songs, they're from albums that are great the way they are, but you're like, yeah, but you like sat on this for 20 years, and we finally get to hear it. So I don't know, that's always fun to me to get to hear this stuff. I was wondering, Jonathan, what are some of your earliest memories of music being a part of your life? Some of the, what was on a lot, maybe when you were growing up, or maybe when you're a little bit older, that, what were your friends into? What are some of your earliest influences that you can remember, or maybe you even got told about by
Yeah.
relatives, that you were like
Well,
little and you didn't even realize were a part of your life?
my Beatles. I mean, it's funny you mentioned that because that was my dad's favorite band, and so Abbey Road is still my favorite record of all time. I just from listening to it over and over and over as a kid. But my dad's mother, who's still alive, she's 89,
Wow.
in South Carolina. Yeah, she's a piano teacher, and she plays in church. I don't know that she's still playing in church. She probably still is. But when I was growing up, anytime we would go visit my grandmother, the whole family would get around the piano and they would sing songs. A lot of them being like old gospel songs. That you
Sure.
know, that's kind of her lane. But she's got this. It's funny because she's older, obviously, but she's got and she's from that old world of old America, and um, very kind of conservative. But every once in a while, she'll kind of be like, "I'm gonna play a boogie," and she has this like mischievous like she's doing something wrong when she's playing these like blues blues notes. It's almost like blues was like bad or something. But I love it because like even now when I go over there to visit her, she'll be like, "So have you learned how to play this diminished scale yet?" And I'm like I'm so lucky because she really did teach me at a very young age, just from being around it. Um, Music just I have it innately kind of there because of that. But I would attribute a lot of what I know to her, and then I would say that hanging out with my dad, driving around, he had an old Gran Torino, and he loved to like roll the windows down and have a beer, even when that's very illegal. But like,
Yeah,
just
but
we would,
he'd wait till he was at a red light so he didn't spill it.
this was different time, but
Yeah.
he would play Beatles and then Leonard Skinner. I mean, Leonard Skinner was his other band besides the Beatles, and you know that's probably those are some of my favorite bands even still. Just from growing up with it, I still there's a time where I was like, I'm only listening to Radiohead and Pink Floyd. Um, but like now that I've gotten a little older, I've gone back to Skinner a lot more, and they're just amazing too.
Well, that must be great because I have a list that was sent to me of bands that you've been able to open for. So I see that you did open for Skinner, and that seems like it must have it's a good sound. I think your sound would complement their audience well. But also, like, I know plenty of more like just rock bands have opened for them. I think it was just last year. I feel like the band Tesla opened for them. So like the Skinner's great because you can have blues, you can have country,
Yeah,
you can have like. But how was that for you personally? Like actually like getting to
I
open
mean,
for Skinner?
it's like having a childhood dream, and then you're in it. And I mean, I was so young at the time that it's like all that stuff happens in such a flash when you've grown up dreaming about something, and then it happens. It's weird how it's like your wedding day or something. Like you it goes by so fast that you're like you look back, you're like, I don't even remember what happened. Like that's kind of what it was like. I mean, I know that my dad, my parents came out to those shows, and it definitely was like surreal. And I feel like at that moment, even though we were still broke as hell as a band and rolling around, in a 15 passenger van, we still were like looking at each other, high fiving each other, like we've made it,
Yeah.
and in a lot of ways, like we really had. But a funny story about that tour: the first night we were just so excited. We're like kids, we're like kids at a candy store. We just felt like we were like there. And so we overdrank after the set. I mean, we finished our set and we like went back and we just were partying like as a band, and we ended up getting just just to the level of not remembering anything. And my bass player and I at the time, this is like 12 years ago, get into a fight, and he freaking punches me in the face.
Wow.
And yeah, no, it's funny now. It was funny then,
Yeah,
not
sure.
me. But
Yeah.
he gave me a black eye, okay? And the rest of the tour, so I'm on this Leonard Skinner tour. The rest of the tour, I've got a black eye. So in every photo from that tour, there's me with a black eye.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Uh,
is it a bad story? A good story? Bad story?
no, that's a
It's what it
great
is.
story.
It is what it is. But
Yeah. You know, a black eye definitely takes a while. You know, some of my audience knows. A couple weeks ago, I fell down in a parking lot outside of a concert, and I wish I was drunk because then it would be a better story. And I had this like bright purple eye for like 2 weeks, you know, and it eventually turned black. My daughter is 4. She thought it was hysterical. She just liked to point at it. And I'm like, all right, just remember that it hurts. So when you point at it, don't poke it. But yeah, it takes a long time for it to go away. And that's pretty funny though that the rest of the tour,
oh
you
yeah, like
you have that in. I saw, you know, and I think that obviously I said kind of the same thing about Skinner. I think that your sound would complement a number of different acts. Some of them, you know, I feel like it's a little closer to than others. I see ZZ Top and AC/DC. So
mhm.
I'd love to hear anything about either or both of those. If you want to talk about you know, getting the chance to play with you know, two of the biggest bands in rock and roll for only the last like 50 years. You know.
Yeah, they'll probably never be surpassed. I mean, those
Yeah.
guys. It's like ACDC. It's just favorite band, like favorite rock band. It's hard. It's hard for me to find something that I love more. Just for that one thing that they do.
Yeah.
It's like, I've got a 1965 Ranchero. I'm into old cars, and it's an old Ford muscle, pre big block, but it's it's pretty tough. And that's the only tape I had in there for the first like 5 years I had it was, Highway to Hell. And like that album is it's just like it embodies rock and roll. I mean, I I just live for that stuff. It gets me so pumped up. Like when I listen to that stuff, it makes me want to just like just do, anything. I can feel like I can do anything when I'm listening to that stuff. So like getting the opportunity to go in there and play with those guys, it's a dream come true. And of course, like I said before, it's just like those moments, they go by in such a flash because you're just so excited, about it that it's hard to really take it in, like because it just goes by so fast. But it's same for ZZ Top. I mean, it's like I can't really even describe like how much how much I'm influenced by like Billy Gibbons guitar playing and by the sound and style. It's unbelievable. And then to hang out with them and it's like I turn into a little nerd. Like I just turn into like I don't even know how to really like have a normal conversation with them because I'm too much of a fan, to really like treat them like anything but a fan. And so I'll say this: I've got a cool story about ZZ Top. I was, you know, over the moon about going on that run, and I was like, got this guitar that took me like, at that time was probably took me 3 months to afford to buy it, just because I was working basically fast food back then, and
Mm-hmm.
saving up the cash to buy this 70s telly was a big deal. And so I have this guitar on tour, and it's like my pride and joy. And I go to Billy Gibbons' tour manager, and I'm like, hey, I kind of want to get Billy to sign my guitar. Like, I don't know, is he cool with that? And he was like, well, of course he's cool with that. He's like, but when he signs guitars, he likes to like draw on them. He likes to like make a, do an ornate like thing. And he like pinstripes them the way he does the hot rods and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, and I kind of like went away thinking like, I don't know if I want him to sign it now because like, this is like my pride and joy. And I don't really want it to turn into like a big drawing, And so I spent the next like 4 nights on the tour, just like thinking about it. It was a big deal to me, and I'm thinking like, I want him to sign it, but I don't know. And I finally just was like, you know what? I don't care. Like if he wants to pinstripe it, I'm fine with it. So like I go to him and I give it to him, and he just turns it around and signs it on the back. Billy Gibbons, 2010 ZZ Top. Like it doesn't do any of the crazy stuff. And I was like, I was pumped to have it, but I was kind of like, I was worried for nothing, you know?
Yeah.
But then
No, and then it's almost like, oh, maybe it would have been cool if he had drawn on it or something, you know. And now
exactly.
it's like just the signature. Yeah.
But
Oh, that.
here's the craziest part of this whole story. So like a couple years later, my van gets broken into and all my guitars and stuff get jacked. You know, classic band story of like you leave your
Sure.
stuff and it gets stolen. And so that guitar gets stolen. And I was freaking heartbroken, you know, like just couldn't tell you. I mean, how sad, because it's like even if once you have money, it's those stories of like when you didn't have money and you had to work your butt off to get that thing. Those things mean a lot more to you. Even, you know, like at one point, yeah, of course you can buy anything you want, but like back then it was like that was a big deal. So I felt like that had been stripped. Well, like the craziest thing is a year later on Twitter, somebody hits me up. I bought your guitars and I'm going to try to get them back to you. And I call the guy immediately. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, yeah, I found them. Somebody was selling all the stuff on this thing, and I saw your backstage pass on one of your road cases.
Oh, wow.
And I looked you up, and he said, and I saw your tweet where you said your guitars were stolen. And he's like, and I just wanted to help and, you know, do some good. And he basically gave me the guitar back. So like that guitar, I feel like is like mystic and magic. And so I just like I it's my one of my most prized possessions. Like there's nothing
Oh, I
I can.
mean, yeah, the fact that you got it back again, and then this guy who didn't even know you, like actually, like, you know, he wanted to help you out. That's it. Yeah, no, that is a great story. I mean,
It's
the
a great
getting
story.
your stuff stolen in the first place is bad, but usually that story doesn't end with anybody getting their equipment back, you know, and
Yeah, and hold on, here it
and
is.
it.
Ready? I've got it right here.
Oh, nice. Well, yeah. So for our video audience, we're gonna actually get to see it.
I'm in my studio, so this is the
No,
talent.
that's fine. Here, I'm gonna switch the images for a second so that people can see it. Sorry, hang on 1 second. I gotta get the pictures right so that people can see it. All right.
So there's
So
the talent.
now you'll be. Oh, look at that. All right.
So it's a
So
Telly
and then
Deluxe. It's a 73, and then right back here is where he signed it.
nice.
Billy Gibbons, Billy G, ZZ Top, 2010.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, this baby is like you know, that's
Yeah.
my
Well,
baby.
now I wouldn't. Now I wouldn't leave the house with it. You know.
I try not
So.
to.
Yeah, I mean ZZ Top, obviously, you know, when I was a kid, they had their big like '80s hits, you know, I think from Eliminator, you know, like Legs and all that stuff. But
Yeah,
then, you know, you hear just like something so simple, like, well, I mean, the opening to LaGrange, you know, like what their sound is that you hear from, you know, just how long that those guys have been at it, and you know, just the very unique set. You pretty much always know a ZZ Top song within the first few seconds. You know, they don't
exactly.
surprise you. And by the and I would say the same thing about AC/DC. A slight different your beginning versus now, but usually you're like before the vocal starts, I know who this is, and I think that's probably what all bands strive for, to be that recognizable, but you know, still sound fresh.
It's
Well, go
to
ahead.
do.
Sorry.
No, it's
Yeah,
hard to do.
Jonathan. I know that you've got a couple of gigs coming up, including the Wildflower Arts and Music Festival in Richardson, Texas, in May 21st. In terms of other performances, do you have anything planned? Things in the works? You know, obviously you want to get out there and make sure people know about the song and what everything else you're working on.
Totally. Yeah, we're doing dates, a lot of dates around Texas, but we've got Oklahoma, we've got yeah, just some California. I've got a Los Angeles date in May. Um, I mean, things are finally starting to feel like we're, you know, getting back to touring and stuff.
Yeah.
It's been a little bit touch and go, but I just did a 3-week tour, and it went well. and I think that things are starting to feel back to normal. So I'm going to be out there for sure. Um, but definitely got lots of Texas, like Austin, Houston, Dallas, um, Oklahoma, a lot of stuff around here um, planned for the next few months. So
No, that'll be great. And obviously, Jonathan Tyler Music is the easiest place to go and just find out everything. And so you've got this song, and I know we talked a little bit about there'll be a video. What are you working on? Are you working on an album? Just going to do some songs, or I mean, there's so many different ways to do it now. I mean, even when bands do have an
yeah,
album, sometimes you'll hear 4 or 5 of the songs in the months leading up to it. I know there's so many different approaches. So, what are you thinking? Maybe the rest of the year in terms of putting out new music.
yeah, it's been it has like everything else, it's been touch and go, but I feel like we're my sense is that things are kind of starting to come back and that we're opening up. So what I'm trying to do now is queue up the release of the rest of this record so that by summertime this album's starting to it's out there. um, I've already put out about half the songs from the album. I was going to put this album out in 2020, but it didn't feel right with everything like kind of shutting down. um, so yeah, I think we're getting the wheels turning again now for my business. And I think you're going to see a lot more from me over the next year. This will be the first of many different singles that drop, along with the rest of the record. And then I'm even planning to have another one queued up pretty soon. So
Nice. Yeah, I
I've
mean
been,
there were a couple of different approaches, with bands who had albums ready in 2020. Some of them put them out. Some bands put out great records in 2020, but now it's 2022 and they've kind of been forgotten about because they didn't really get out there and tour for them. So, I mean, I'm sure there's something to be said for both of them, but it seems like that's a good approach. And to just if people hear what they like, or sorry, if people like what they hear, then they're always ready to hear more. And it seems like that's a great way to do it.
no
So
doubt.
yeah, so Jonathan Tyler Music, I believe, as I said before, that's the website. And that's where they can find everything. They can find the old stuff, the new stuff, and everything.
Yeah.
Jonathan, I really enjoyed chatting with you. I'm glad we got a chance to meet, and hopefully we get a chance to chat again soon.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much. And anytime, I'll just blah blah blah. I'll talk all day. You just turn it on. Let's go.
Yeah. No, and you can very specifically let me know when you'll be in Los Angeles, and I'll see if I happen to be in town at that point, because I'm
Nice.
usually
Yeah.
in town, but so hopefully I get a chance to check you out. So again, this is Jonathan Tyler, and the new song is, of course, Magic Sam's Boogie. You can find that and everything else at JonathanTylerMusic.com. Thanks again.
Cheers.